Welcome to another episode of Away from the Keyboards. Exciting stories shared by real humans until the day that AI takes over. I am your host, Rui, and today I am joined by an old colleague and friend of mine, the guy that taught me about Power BI and how wonderful that tool is, Hugo Neves. For the past decade, he has worked as a data engineer and a data architect in industries like telco, banking, fashion, just to name a few. He focused on getting their raw data and turning it into meaningful insights. He saw the world of business intelligence move from on-prem to cloud technologies. But let's not spoil the episode already. Hugo, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rui.
The first question is always the same. How did you end up here? I see that in your background you started as a Java developer. How does one go from that into business intelligence?
I always liked data, even before that. So the work as a Java developer was actually it was an internship from the master's degree, and that was something that it came up, right? That was an opportunity that came up at the time, working with the insurance company in Portugal. But I always liked data. Even before that, I already wanted to work in that field. Yeah, I always liked what you can take out of it. So basically the insights part of it, and I always found it very interesting, all the good stuff that you can find out hidden in data. I think you know this example of the supermarket where they like to put together, or is it like the chicken and the chips, because people will buy them together. So things like this, right? Which a lot of times it's actually common sense, but not every time, right? Not every time is common sense. So yeah, I like that part of it. So then, yeah, when I had the chance to go into the area, I made the move.
That's a really good example of how analytics can help a company provide a better service. So I'm curious, do you have any interesting insights that you tracked over your career that got you to think about it and be like, that's interesting?
I don't know if you remember this when we were in the bestseller. They were analyzing the photos, and they were analyzing if the types of photos, if types of models, if types of like angles that they were shown at, if that would influence or if that was influencing the sales. And it was influencing. So there was some interesting insights from that. So that was something that, I mean, not unexpected, but it's interesting. Like I was saying before, that a lot of times when you see it, it's like, yeah, this makes sense. This makes sense. It feels like it's something that you could have gotten there by yourself. But it's good to be validated, right? To validate your assumptions and to make decisions based on that. But that was a good example. I saw others, during my career, like in financial, so in banks. I saw some interesting ones also related to, for example, how people invest based on where they're from. So, and that of course relates to cultures. So people from Russia, for example, have a different risk profile than people from Portugal, for example. So Portuguese, for example, we are way more conservative, so we don't like that a lot of risky investments. So I've seen this also showing up, in my career with data, and that's always interesting, when you find out these things. Sometimes also what happens a lot, and this anyway is part of the how do you call it, the scientific methods, that sometimes what happens is that you're actually invalidating something that you thought was true, right? So you actually try to confirm, or you have an hypothesis and you see, okay, does this influence this this result? And then you go look at that, and at least in this case it didn't. That's doing the other way around, right? So try to invalidate an hypothesis that you have, and it's of course also good, because that way you are cutting something that you thought was a common sense and it was true, but it was actually not. So that's also an interesting thing you can take out of data. Yeah.
Data is indeed an interesting domain, and you have been working in it for a while. You have been working as an employee, as a consultant. Sometimes you've worked even as a freelancer or in companies. How do you see the difference in the roles and responsibilities of a data person if they are working as an employee or versus working as a consultant?
So I always worked more in let's call it within the engineering bubble. So I think this in this case it can be a bit different than someone that has, maybe if you are I don't know if you come into a company as a head of data, or you have to design the whole strategy like long term for a company. I think it will be different. But for something with my experience architecting and doing the engineering side of things, let's see the two things that you were talking about. You were saying an employee and a kind of a consultant. So I would say that they can be not that different actually, because if you look at but depends of course on how you are. So let's see what are the stereotypes actually of each one. So the employee is the someone that wears the shirt. How do you say? I don't know how to say this in English. Who wears the shirt of the company, right? So you are the biggest person that defends the company. You breathe the company. You leave the company, right? That's the employee, right? You're never going to leave, and you're going to be 100% devoted to this company. That's the stereotype. What's the stereotype for the consultant? You don't care. You just come and you do your job. You don't care at all about the long term. You just sit here to do 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months of your job, and then you leave. I think myself, I always see myself a bit in the middle of these two. I mean, we work together, and you've seen me on one of those. Yeah, I always saw myself a bit in the middle, and I think that's also why it works for me both ways. The way that I approach this is that I just come and let's try to do the best job possible, and I try to think always long term. Of course, depending on specific situations, depending specific scenarios, sometimes you have to deliver something quickly, right? But even when I start with a client and it's like, okay, we have this project, or we have 3 months, 6 months for you now. I mean, I always come with a long-term approach. So I always try to do the best quality work possible, of course, to my abilities, right? So in that sense, for me, it was never that different. I think I always approach it in the same way, like coming in every day and try to do the best job. So I think I'm in the middle between those two, actually, between the two stereotypes, right? Of course, not everyone is like that, but between the two stereotypes.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do think that we have very similar backgrounds. I was also a consultant. I was also working as an employee, even sometimes working as a consultant and then ending up as an employee in the same exact company. But I think that when it comes to the stereotype of the consultant, what people think about is that you just want to bill your hours, and as soon as you can, you get the hell out of that.
Also, yeah, or coming and like on purpose leaving some traces that you can be called 6 months after to fix. I mean, I personally I don't work like that, but it's true. That's a bit of the stereotype, right? And that's also like of the not only of consultants but consultancy companies, right? That they come with this kind of which this I've also seen. I've seen it myself. This happening, but it's true that so also for legal purposes, tax purposes, yeah, here they are different, of course, right? So I think the consultant and the contractor or freelancer is always going to go out first if needed. But in the end, yeah, if the company really has to go down, I mean, we all go down together sooner or later. So it doesn't make that much difference in the end.
Indeed, when that time comes, it comes for us all. During your career, as you've been working as both a data engineer and a data architect, what in your perspective is one of the most misunderstood parts about the job?
So there's different approaches to this. So you can zoom in and zoom out a bit. I would say, like, I would zoom out a bit. So how people from outside the team, when I say team, like a data team, how do they see what they're doing? I usually come across two common things. One is the need for real-time data. I mean, this is something that I ask almost every week. Someone asks, can we have this like in real time? Like, okay, but why? So why do you want, are you going to look at this every second? Or do you have something that alerts you and that you're going to act on it every second of your day, of your working day? And of course, 99.999% of the times the answer is no. So that's something that I would definitely say that's not misunderstood, but people think it because also they hear the buzzwords. Of course, everyone always wants the things most updated as possible. But what a lot of times they don't think, and this I think comes from the business side, they don't think that, okay, but am I actually going to act on this, right? Of course, for some things make sense, like for some sensors, some automated stuff, you have some IoT data, you have something in Fukushima, something is very hot. I mean, I think it's good to have that, but this is almost never the case, right? So I think that's one of them. The other one, zooming it a bit in on the data that we actually move, is the case of the data is missing, right? So someone comes to you on 9 a.m. and says, okay, there's no data for today. Is there something wrong? And almost every time it's not going to be on the data pipeline, right? It's going to be on the source. And we are just actually showing or moving. So moving, maybe not, but showing nothing because there was nothing to move because there was nothing in the source. So for me, these two cases are almost things that people come to you, something is wrong. So because I think, and this to go back a bit to your question, yeah, I think a lot of times they don't understand how what's actually being done in the data pipeline, how we collect the data. Like another, I just remember now, another one is also the if you not update correctly the source. Like if you're reading, for example, from a table in a source in MySQL, for example, if you don't update correctly a column or a specific row, we're not going to know, right? So if there's no change, if thing that we use to know if there's new data, if that doesn't change, we don't know. And a lot of times, I think people from the business side, they're not aware of that. They think that everything should work automatically and also forever, right? But I think this is common with software engineering. So things you do it once and it works forever, you never have to touch it again. I think this is a common misconception about software engineering in general. And of course, data engineering also suffers from that. On a specific example of real-time data, the cost of even building it's way higher. So it's way more difficult on a engineering side to build something proper in real time than a batch that runs once a day.
Indeed, that is something that is often forgotten, is the cost of the development that exists in the back, and that everything that you create will end up as tech debt and will need to be maintained. And moving a bit into happier notes, since we are in the world of AI and new things are popping up all the time, one curiosity that I have for you, looking into the future of business intelligence, what is out there now that excites you?
I would say so. Something that I've seen recently, and I think is gaining traction, is Apache Iceberg, which is something that enables us. Basically, it's a table format which is ACID compliant. So it basically can organize your, let's call it a data lake, so the files that you have in a data lake, for example, in S3 or in Blob in Azure. So it enables you to organize and to have metadata on those files, and it enables you to query and to run transactional operations directly on the files, which is something that you didn't have before. For me, I see it as exciting because it could take potentially one step of the whole ETL, the whole pipeline. I think even now, if I would start a new project, depending on the size of data, of course, this could take out even the whole need for data warehouse itself. Because as long as you can run analytical queries, right, on top of data that's in files in S3, for example, like in Parquet files, as long as you can do that, you can run your analysis. You can have views, so you can use Athena, for example. You can have views, and you can have your analysis being done on that data. And this you can already do right now. But what something like Iceberg brings is the capability to update that data, update the files, delete the files. For example, for deletion, something like GDPR compliance. How do we do right now? Right now, it's quite hard, actually. You can delete things easily from a data warehouse. So something like Snowflake, it's easy to delete, but if you are reading that from files that are in S3, for example, it's not that easy to find, especially if it's something like Parquet files. It's not that easy to find that specific raw information about that person, right? So to act on that deletion is quite hard right now. But yeah, like I was saying, something like Iceberg, I think it will make that easier. So that's something that I'm interested on. I played a bit with it and looked like it has a good potential. So that's something that I'm excited on. On that note, also another thing that it actually has is the time travel. So considering the snapshots, those immutable snapshots, it enables time travel already kind of automatically, right? It has the metadata thing, all the files, which can actually be a bad thing. So many metadata files, but that's one of the disadvantages. But the time travel allows you easily. I think Snowflake also has this nowadays. So I think a lot of technologies are catching up with this kind of capabilities because it's a common thing, right? Having a fact table with snapshots over time, and then you want to see, okay, but how were things a month ago? How does that relate to the sales of a month ago? So that one I like, and it's something that looks like it could reduce the need, for example, even to have a data warehouse itself. For example, I work with a client, we have Redshift server running. It's not that powerful, and it's still like with 3 environments, we're still spending like 1.5K a month, which is not much. But if it's something that we could reduce from there, then of course, when you query directly on the files, you're gonna have to spend this case on S3, but it will be less, So, and also, of course, all the glue jobs that send data into data warehouse, all of those things you could reduce already. So I think that's something that would be good. Me personally, if I would start a new project and I had the freedom to decide, that's something that I would definitely explore. Yeah, to use. So that's inside data. I think that but there are other things like some buzzwords running around like DuckDB, Polars, things that allow you to do things in your local machine. But then how do you actually go from that to production environment? Is it really that useful when you actually have to productionize things? I don't know about that. So we'll see what time will tell there. But there are also some some exciting things there. Of course, also on the orchestrated side of things, there are also newer things. So Airflow keeps improving. There are other new ones also coming. Me personally, for example, Snowflake, I think it's really good. I think it's the best data warehouse that we have right now. It has a lot of like new functions, new things that you can do with data that you were always kind of hacking, or maybe you needed 5 or 6 SQL lines. Now you need one. You have a function. Things like this, right? So it's always evolving. Yeah, it's always evolving, and there's always new stuff coming. But of course, you have to be aware of the of the buzzwords, right? In AI, man, there's a lot of things, right? I mean, even AI with data itself, I've seen people using LLMs to do data quality checks. So basically, you put a step in your like ETL pipeline that looks at the data, even looking at the data before and after, and just see if anything looks weird. You know. So that's, I mean, already one example. Of course, you have libraries that do that. So I think also right now we use AI for everything. But that's an example where you can put, and there I've seen people putting AI not related to data. I mean, I've seen today actually a video of like an AI video where the actors also talk already, and this is something that I didn't see before. I think last week this was not a thing, or at least was not that not that famous. That's a big leap, yeah. That's incredible, and it's amazing that what was it, 2 years ago or 1 year ago, we were watching Will Smith eating spaghetti in a very, I don't know if you've seen this. It's like in a very bad way, like it was a nightmare. And after 1-2 years, like it's amazing, right? Even without going into the software engineering world, what it can do even with code, which is also really good. I mean, the whole video part and audio, it's amazing. It's coming for us all for sure. For me, this is the same change as when we had like internet, maybe not, but I would say Google. So the ability to get information that easily and that fast that you didn't have, I think, like in '95. I don't know, you tell me. But I don't remember those times. I remember times before internet, but I didn't need to Google anything at the time. So my life was fine without Google. But when it appeared, I think it was a big, like in our world, right? People with the big books, right, of software, the Java edition 97, like this stopped existing, right? So I think now we're coming again. It's a huge tool, right, that makes you, like you said, faster. Yeah, I think it is crazy. I think another example that I remembered now, and now back in the software world, I also saw an article of a guy, of some team, and they were explaining that they did conversion. They had like dozens of XML files, so old school, and they converted them to JSON. They just put everything into an LLM. I guess maybe to ChatGPT, I don't know, but they just put everything. And okay, I don't know about the privacy of those files. This is not it's not the point here. But they just put everything there. Okay, now convert this to JSON. And it was ridiculously fast, right? And then, of course, they had to check. So that's what we have to do as humans, right? It's a tool, so we still have to check. But yeah, that was they had dozens. So can you imagine one person manually converting XML files to JSON? Man, this will take forever, right? If you have 40, 50 files. Yeah, crazy times.
Yeah, indeed. And as everything is changing so rapidly, let's say that you have the opportunity to go back and give a piece of advice to young Hugo about where he should be focusing, or if he should be pursuing a career in data or something else. So what advices would you have for young Hugo, or maybe for someone fresh out of college, a junior, or someone trying to do an horizontal jump from business into something like data?
So I think it's definitely two different backgrounds. I think if you don't come from a computer science engineering background, it's a completely different level than if you come from something different. Right? So if you don't have that background, because in college you can already focus a bit on some data courses. You can choose a bit where you go, and you come way more prepared, even for something like data modeling. We already do a lot of this in college, right? Not every, but in a lot of like object programming kind of course, you learn already quite a bit of data modeling. And I think that's one example, something that's very important to know. So if you know that already, then good. If not, so if you don't come from that background, then it's something that you should really focus on. I think it's something that people ignore a lot. Go into data, you think, okay, I'm just going to learn pandas. And that's not it's not just that. Like the thing is not just moving data around. It's also that, but it's not just that. In the end, why do you move data around? Because you want to present data in a way that the business can take some value out of it, right? And for that, a lot of times things like data modeling, that's what you need to present the data and to organize the data in a proper way and to facilitate the analysis. So that's something I think is very important. I mean, I would say that to me, I already had a bit. Myself, I had a bit of knowledge there already. But I would say, this is very important. Other than that, I think nowadays programming language Python is the one. Even for things, and this comes a bit into if you go as a data engineer, gonna need to program, and you're gonna need more and more to do a bit of DevOps work. So things like infrastructure as code, for example, Terraform, you need to know this, right? So you need to know a bit of at least one of the cloud environments, either it be a GCP, AWS, whatever. Know a bit of the services that exist, and know a bit of infrastructure as code, so something like Terraform, because it's going to help you kind of architect the solution itself, because in the end, like the pipeline is a set of things, right? A set of services that work together. So know that. Know Python. Python is going to be also Terraform. You can also write with Python, so that's important. And then I would say you have to know SQL. So that in the end, SQL is king. It has been. It will continue to be. That's the one that every data analyst should know. You can know the tools that are around it, that are wrapping around it, that they exist and they are good. But in the end, that's the most important one. Also for transformations, because I worked even before with no code tools like GUI based tools, right? And like you really lack a lot of control, right, on what you can do. And also to see what you actually have to do, it's also hard. And then of course there's, depending on use case, sometimes like it's true that an SQL transformation thing can become very big, but depends on use case. But you're gonna need SQL for sure. So learn on that, learn all the keywords, go up until window functions, and then when you know them, I think you're fine. I think when you can master those, I think you're fine for now. And then it just comes with experience, right? There's not much you can do. I would say if it's like an horizontal move, it's definitely harder, right? Especially if you go into an engineering role, definitely harder. But I think you can just create something yourself, right? Just run something locally, just have a small project where you move some data around.
And with that great advice, I think it's time for us to end the show in a high note. Thank you so much, Hugo, for coming here and having this chat with me. If people want to find you, know a little bit more about you, where can they find you?
Can check my LinkedIn. I have quite some information there. My work is also showcased on LinkedIn, so you can also check there.
And to everyone else that is listening, until next time, see you all away from the keyboards.